Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man behind Distorted Illuminations, good brother Monarch.
It's good to be back again. This is one of the chapters I've been looking forward to since we started this whole review.
Especially given how many times we were putting pins in things to come back to in relation to magic use. So this is technically going to, with a lot of these, we've tackled chapters individually, even if we've hopped around a little bit. With this particular episode, that's not exactly going to be the case because we decided that the two chapters we're going to be covering, Mana and Miasma and Lens and Magic, were both too small for our purposes to be covered individually. So we might end up with an episode 1 week, and then the next week that is only 30 minutes, and that just won't do.
Yeah. While technically the Lens section is long, it's following a lot of what we've done already with like the tiered abilities and how we're not going to be going over each individual lens and what it does.
Mm-hmm. Most because as I said before, that would be getting too far into the weeds.
Yeah.
And since this all is in the same is all in the same grouping of the magic system of Cursebrand, I figured this is as good a spot as any to knock the whole thing out in one go. Hence the combined title that you're seeing on screen of Mana and Magic, because one chapter is Mana and Miasma, the other chapter is Lens and Magic. And the best way for me to describe Lens, and we'll get into that later on, is something like Materia. Although me saying it's like Materia is still somewhat of a stretch. Yeah. Don't think that you're going to be able to use some of the busted ass Materia strats you had in, say, Final Fantasy VII and think it's going to work here. Otherwise,
the video of watching a level 7 Tifa beat Emerald Weapon.
I remember Chrono Cross having a slow-mo and fast-forward button. I kind of wish there was something like that for some of the FF entries. I mean, nowadays you could speed hack it, but
yeah.
I've stated that between the weapons in 7, Emerald Weapon is the one I dreaded fighting the most because it is a long game of attrition. Especially if you spam Knights of the Round.
I hated that. I hated using that summon.
I mean,
it's cool the first time.
I mean, Ruby Weapon is bullshit, but at least it's manageable bullshit. Though, it could be worse. You could be dealing with a hidden boss in any Tri-Ace game I've ever played in my life.
But yes, more RPGs need kind of a in-game speed-up option.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, obviously if you're playing... And it's not just console RPGs that have this problem, because I had this exact problem with Wizardry even after speed hacking it.
But yeah, before we get too far off this topic,
yeah,
I do want to say, just in relation to the system in general, this, like, I've liked just about everything we've read on this system up until now, but a lot of this, what I think our final thoughts are going to somewhat hinge around how this magic and mana system actually works.
Yeah,
I think it might be a breaking point.
The non-magic stuff is great, and there's a lot of stuff there to enjoy. Don't get me wrong. But we've had plenty of cases, including one game that you apologize for on multiple occasions, that have the martial end of thing completely overshadowed by the casty part of thing. You know which games I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The same games that keep insisting that martial characters aren't supposed to be powerful.
In this case, though, I'm more referring to like a lot of. We've kind of talked like a lot of the classes and whatnot are going to be dipping into more than just the one thing, and to some degree, everything seemed to at least connect a little bit to this game's lens system.
Some classes more than others.
Oh, definitely. But it seems like it's always going to be relevant no matter what class you pick.
But fortunately, this isn't a case where there's that hard divide between martial and casty. Everybody's gonna be a gish. Some more than others, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I will let you start out with the opening preamble for Chapter 13, Mana and Miasma.
1,000 years ago, mana and lens were considered useless natural phenomena, as dangerous as light. As dangerous as lighting, and 10 times as common. While mana pools and mana fountains were a thing of beauty, often they produced monsters and caused mutation, making them a thing to be avoided. In the north, lens was only seen as another gemstone and used in jewelry and expensive ornaments. Today, Manatech is one of the most important technological and industrial powers in the world. So, mana. At the heart of magic is mana, an invisible and tangible energy that seems to be purely existential, manifesting only as the vital energy of life and thought. Mana flows with life and death, night and day, and the movement of the heavens. Where exists life, there is mana. Where there exists thought, there is greater mana. Because it is ever present, mana reactors can draw in and condense the eldritch current, charging dithesite power cells, or enrich it further to produce synthetic lens. As fuel, mana can produce limitless energy. With Manatech can be transformed into limitless arcane effects and tools. Those skilled in lens arts can tap this great current directly, using a junctioned lens to release powerful magic. When mana is used in this way, an amount is temporarily consumed. A creature's natural mana reserve will replenish with rest, and some talismans or tinctures might increase mana recovery. The great current of energy that connects all living beings across an infinite number of universes, every living thing possesses mana, even planets. I think this is supposed to say on Gestal. On Gestal, the mana flow can collect and surge, creating mana pools and mana fountains. Artificial mana pools are harnessed in mana reactors, massive engines that use dithesite to collect and condense this energy. Then the mana pools. Though it flows through the world in a great current, on occasion, in place of beauty or serenity, the mana coalesces, running together. The mana literally puddles on the ground, in a tree hollow, in a rock indent. This breathtaking visage glows with its own light, emitting rainbow hues and slow multicolored fragments of light, often called mana fairies. Some mana pools are are as small as a drop of a few dew. Felt like I had a stroke there for a second. Some mana pools are as small as a drop of dew. Others are like iridescent lakes. Those with enough training can draw energy directly from these areas, which can prevent them from becoming mana fountains. Up to 15 points of mana can be drawn by those with lens arts. Training each round is an action. This can be used to replenish your own mana or cast magic. The total available amount of mana is dependent on the size of the pool. If a pool is exhausted, it will vanish. Otherwise, it will erupt at the end of its life into a mana fountain. Mana pools will last 10d6 hours per foot across. Those under a foot last 5d6 hours. That means that some of the largest might last years. Mm-hmm. At which point we get a quick little chart from under 6 feet to up to 1,000 feet for mana pool size and mana availability.
Which unfortunately means that the mana available will never be over 9,000. There, I made the joke. You happy? But then we have mana fountains. Mana pools is... I feel like that it says mana pools is that they are innately temporary. I feel like that should have gotten a pass in editing. And at the end of their life, the pool's fairies begin to shoot off rapidly, slowly decreasing in speed until they are blinding streaks. Then the pool explodes. The pool's explosion is called a fountain and can be lethal. The size and damage of the fountain is directly correlated to the size of the pool. Those within the radius of the eruption take damage, or half damage if they make a successful resistance agility check versus 25. Any mortal creatures who takes damage from a mana fountain must make a resistance stamina check versus 20 to or contract mana poisoning. I think there were a few words missing in that, but I get the gist.
This book definitely did need like one more pass to fix a few of these.
Yeah. So then we have another chart with the pool size, the fountain radius, so the radius of the explosion, how much etheric damage, and the chance of lens. So, and speaking of mana poisoning, let's get to that next. Creatures exposed to a mana fountain or who spend more than a few minutes in a mana pool are likely to contract mana poisoning. Once contracted, the victim will be confused for 1d4 minutes, then become disoriented, drooling invalids. All mental ability scores become 2, speed is reduced by 1/4. This condition lasts 2d4 weeks, after which the victim makes a resistance soul check against a VS of 30. Those who succeed recover overnight. Those who fail begin to mutate into fiends. And then we have Dithesite. Soulstone, Mana Crystal, Aura Prism. Dithesite has many names throughout history, each a feeble attempt at expressing the mystery of the stone. This incredibly common mineral seems to represent a huge portion of the planet's crust, yet it defies explanation. Most importantly, the stone can store mana, and be used as a battery to power mana technology. This energy is inaccessible to anyone without the ability to channel arcane energy, such as the mana channeling talent. And right below that we have absorbing mana. Placing a Dithesite crystal in a mana pool will cause the stone to absorb 15 mana per minute, up to its maximum amount. The total amount of energy raw stones can absorb and hold from a mana pool or from mana channeling depends on its size and clarity. And the size goes from tiny, small, medium, large, huge, massive, and colossal. The crystal qualities are of 4 degrees: flawed, cloudy, clear, and flawless. And each one of them has a different mana capacity, essentially. It goes from just 1 for a tiny flawed crystal to 3,375 for a colossal flawless crystal. Then we have sharing mana. A creature that can willingly lend up to 1/2 their mana with you. typo. So long as the taker can manipulate arcane energy via abilities such as mana channeling. Up to 12 creatures can join with the caster to offer their energy. This extra mana can be used to recover your own missing energy or supplement your maximum mana, in which case you can hold onto extra magic for up to 1 minute. And then we have using mana, and I'll let you take that.
I'll say quickly, I think sharing mana should have been under the using mana section. It seems like it should probably have been after this, but yes, using mana. So, mana is regularly stored in specialized Dithesite power cells. These standardized cartridges are used in weapons, vehicles, and just about everything that uses mana. Monotech machines make use of the energy created by lens to exploit physical phenomenon, from internal combustion to electrical generation. When a lens or magical ability is activated, it consumes an amount of mana. Some abilities allow the caster to overcast, increase the power of the magic at the cost of additional mana. Mana is consumed when the magical effect is finalized, not before. If an effect disrupts the magic before it is cast, the mana is not consumed. However, if an effect neutralizes the magic or steals a portion of the energy causing it to fail, the mana cost is consumed normally. If a spell is overcast, but some portion of that energy is stolen, the spell might still cast if the minimum amount of energy is available, and it will be cast at that power. Recovering mana. Everyone who can tap into a source of arcane energy is able to refill their internal reserves with that external mana, regardless of the source. Otherwise, the only way to recover mana is through rest. Each night's rest will recover 20 points of mana, plus any bonus from a high soul score. However, some talents...
Oh. Sorry about that. Discord cut off for a second.
Oh, you're good. I just got through the recovering mana. What I'll say with what I like about this using mana setup is specifically with the overcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Because how this is going, like, you're essentially putting X amount of your energy into something, but if someone, like, drains that off, if there's still enough energy there to throw it out, it'll just get thrown out without whatever you were doing to overcasting.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that. It gives you a bit more incentive, too, to try to do things like overcasting for something more than just additional power. It makes it harder for someone to just shut your spell down. I like that.
Mm-hmm. So
next...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, next up, we get into magic.
Mm-hmm.
When you activate an ability that consumes mana, you are, by definition, using magic. Magic can take many shapes and effects, but the most common is lens. Stones which grant the user access to a small number of spells. Anyone with a basic talent can use lens. Most other forms of magic are born from extensive training and unique talents.
Let's see, and I'll take it from here. Then
All
get
right.
to using magic. Regardless of where you gain your magical abilities, there are some common terms and principles that apply to all magical abilities, be it lens spells, Vanya techniques, or mysterious Christology abilities. The Vanya and Christology stuff, that we've already covered. So first is casting times. Lens will take one or more standard actions to cast on your turn. This is the casting time. Some spells can be cast on your reaction as well. When cast on your turn, those spells have a casting time of 1 action. If you do not have enough actions on your turn to cast a spell on your turn, the casting time will bleed over into the next round on your turn and create an opening that others can exploit. See then resistance and casting check. When you cast a spell that affects another creature and they choose to resist, you need to make a lens arts check. The ability score you will roll your casting check on is soul. When someone wishes to resist your spell, they roll against this check. And consuming mana. When a spell is activated and fully cast, an amount of your mana is consumed. And overcasting. Some spells have the option to overcast, increase their power by adding additional mana. The cost and overcost increment will be listed in the spell's description. And then we have range, which is self-explanatory. The ranges go from so we have personal, touch, close, medium, far, and unlimited. And as well as special for those that don't have a target or are ones that don't really fit into the other range categories. Then we have duration, which is exactly what you think it is. There's 3 types. Concentration. You can maintain it as long as you're conscious by spending an action per round. You can't maintain it during a break or while resting. Instant. If you've played Magic the Gathering, you know what instant means when it comes to using magic. And permanent. Whatever is created via this magic will last until it is destroyed by the ravages of time or the intent of some creature. Then we have magical combat. Spells that create a physical energy or force to attack another creature may have dodge listed as the resistance check. This means the caster makes an attack roll as their casting skill against the target's guard. The target is not entitled to a resistance check in this instance, and instead can take normal reactions such as dodge at the cost of vigor. And then we have interrupting casting, which is exactly what you'd think it is. Though one thing that I like is the fact that it says that being attacked while you cast a spell will not interrupt the casting, but being wounded, dazed, restrained, or knocked unconscious will. Meaning that if somebody attacks you and misses, it doesn't count as an interrupt. I've seen some games where just getting attacked is enough to be interrupted, even if they whiff.
Yeah, that seems a little silly to me.
Mm-hmm.
That said, getting hit in this game doesn't necessarily mean it'll be interrupted.
Mm-hmm.
It's when one of those things you blitzed it off happen.
Yeah. Well, that does mean that that characters who are good at getting in close and knocking people out are going to have an advantage, since being given the conditions that are mentioned there. Then we have range and area, which is basically the AoE. And the only thing I'll say when it comes to the magic use that I wanted to point out has to do with concentration. In some games, this concentration rule might be a bit of a hindrance. But because of the fact that you don't have just one action per round, or one major action per round, concentration is not as much of a deal breaker as it could be in some other games.
Yeah, I forget off the top of my head how many actions around you might expect in this game. But even just kind of thinking back, I don't think spending one is going to be some catastrophic cost. It's a cost, and depending on how your concentration magic works when we get to it, I'm going to assume it's a very reasonable cost for the time being.
Yeah, you get 2 actions by default. Depending on your build, you might have more.
Yeah. See, then next up, I will go ahead and take Miasma.
Mm-hmm.
Just as mana may coalesce in places of great beauty and serenity, so too around places of death and fear the miasma may form. This dense black and red fog covers an area of 3d6 times 100 cubic feet and will drift through the area, lasting 1d6 hours. Once formed, the miasma will randomly move to feet per round. Or 10 feet per round, not 2 feet. rolling along the surface of the ground. Because the miasma is heavier than air, it will sink to the lowest level of the land, even pouring down den or sinkhole openings. This also means that when it forms in a city, it ends up pouring through the buildings and into the understreets. This Methodus will automatically kill any living creatures caught in the area unless they can succeed a resistance soul check with a VS35. A living creature that remains in the miasma will suffer 3d6 health damage and lose 1d10 mana on their turn each round while in the cloud. Though a successful resistant check halves this health and mana damage. Holding one's breath doesn't help. Machines and corrupted creatures are immune to the effects. If a creature's mana is reduced to 0 while inside the miasma, permanently reduce its soul ability score by 1d8, unless it possesses a corruption score, in which case it is immune to this effect. If this would reduce a creature's soul to 0 or less, they are doomed to a hideous fate as a horror. Such a victim will suffer vomiting and shakes for 1d4 hours, before abruptly dying and reanimating as a horror. A creature with a corruption score which dies inside a miasma will return as a horror. Other dead bodies and creatures killed in the miasma have a significant chance of reanimating as mindless undead horrors, 10 or higher on a d20. Thus, while those with the Cursebrand are immune to the damaging effects of the miasma, they are assured reanimation if they die within the blackened mists.
Mm-hmm. And then we go to Lens and Magic. The crystallized form of mana is known as Lens. Once again, Lens spelled with a Z. This orb, 2 inches across, is an etched, cloudy stone filled with light, colorful patterns. While lens is the scientific term, many people still refer to them as monostones or moonstones in some places. In nature, lens is created from the violent force of very large mana fountains. Consumer lens is synthesized from dithesite enriched in a mana reactor. Naturally occurring lens are rare, and often higher quality than the synthetic lens produced by corporations such as the APOC and Drachen Federation. Besides its powers, the physical properties of lens raise significant and unanswered questions about the physical laws of the universe. The material seems to defy explanation, and there has yet to be any significant breakthrough in understanding what exactly lens is composed of. One of the prominent and unpopular hypotheses is that lens is dark matter. And there is a note about apocryphal magic, but it's just a tease that that's going to be happening. It's basically a tease of look for future expansions, which... Alright, moving on. Then we have lens quality. Not all lens are created equal. Like equipment, lens always has an associated with it, again, typo. Synthetic lens tend to be poor and ordinary, whereas naturally occurring lens tend to be heroic and epic. What defines dragon lens is that they are all legendary or mythic quality. Most spells will list damage or effects as dice of damage or similar, but will not name what dice. This is because the quality of the lens determines what dice you use. Lens quality will set the effect dice and modify the junction bonus as outlined below. So it goes from feeble to mythic, and it's pretty much using the dice range of the Prometheum system as a whole. Each one has a certain effect dice, as well as a junction modifier. I'm sure we're going to be getting to that soon, as well as a cost modifier. And it goes from 1/4 the normal cost to 10,000 if you're trying to buy a mythic level lens.
Considering that's using D100, I'm going to say the cost is probably justified.
So then
we'll get next to
junctioning lens, and I'll let you take that.
So to use lens, the gem must first be junctioned. Okay, I think this is supposed to say bonded to a master and not boned.
Yeah.
But the 13-year-old in me is laughing. Bonded to a master. At any given time, a creature can junction one lens for every 5 points of their soul score. Junctioning a lens requires the prospective user grip the lens tightly for 1d6 rounds and succeed a lens art soul check versus 15. At the end of the time, the lens will pulse in time to the new master's heartbeat for about an hour, and the matrix will glow bright blue, green, or violet, depending on what type of lens it is. A junctioned lens will remain synced to a master for as long as it remains close, and for 1d12 days after it leaves their possession, after which one of the user's junction slots opens, and the lost lens must be junctioned again. To activate or gain the benefits of the lens, it must be in physical contact with the user's skin. Many companies manufacture specialized lens harnesses for this purpose. Bracers, bracelets, and neck pieces are the most common. Junction bonus. When you have a high-level lens junctioned, you may gain some tangible benefit, including bonuses to durability, vigor, mana, or resistance. You only gain these bonuses while you are junctioned to and in contact with your lens, such as in a harness. Now for lens growth. One of the key aspects of lens arts is augmenting lens through forging. By permanently sacrificing a portion of your personal mana, it is possible to channel some of that energy and power into the lens, increasing its potency or unlocking additional spells. All lenses begin at rank 1. Forging the lens, sacrificing mana, can raise the lens's level up to rank 5. Increasing the level of a lens will increase the bonuses for junctioning that lens and will unlock an additional spells for spell lens. For forging lens. To forge lens, you must have junctioned the lens you wish to empower. Dedicate 6 uninterrupted hours of meditation and focus solely letting your energy crystallize within the lens. You reduce your maximum mana by the amount shown on the table, but your lens will grow in power. Mm-hmm. So 1, no sacrifice, 16 for level 2, 24 3, 32 4, 45.
40 for 5. You almost said
40.
45.
I think I did say 45. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, 45.
There's also a minimum level at lens level 2 of 5 for each lens level. So
okay, this game is definitely taking a lot of notes from Final Fantasy VII's materia system.
As if that wasn't obvious already.
I know, when you were saying like it was a bit of a stretch, I'm like, okay, let's see. No, this is just the materia system.
I said in some places it's not a 1-to-1.
Oh, it's definitely not, but mind you, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So far, I'm liking this setup. Mm-hmm. But then we have actually activating lens. Mm-hmm. Invoking a spell or magical ability from a lens follows the same rules regardless of the caster's class or the specific lens. Casting requires a number of actions based on the lens's casting time, consumes an amount of mana that is a set of effects, including a range and duration. Any lenses that can affect another creature or can otherwise be contested require a lens arts check. This roll sets the VS of other attempts to resist, evade, or nullify the spell. The ability score used to resist a spell depends on the effect in question, but casting checks are made against with soul or occasionally corruption. Yeah, after this, we're going to be starting to get into the actual lens catalog, which this is where we're not going to go over each individual lens. But yeah, just for the quick list of the but below the most common lens, these are all regularly synthesized by the major powers of the world. It is by no means an exhaustive list, and there are many rare or unique lenses waiting to be discovered. So at this point, we're looking at about... Oh, this is many pages of lenses. I'm not going to bother counting all of those up. So let's see. I will, just for the sake of this... Oh, you're good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was going to just kind of pick one random lens so we can just look at the quick list, get an idea of how these lenses actually work. Without going through every single one of them.
Yeah, the lens level does act similar to the skill trees that we've seen. It's just that it's a one-way thing. Let's go with fire. Everybody loves fire materia. So and it says it's one of the first primary lenses to be synthesized. So level 1 grants fire, level 2 grants energize 10, level 3 grants fire on, level 4 grants energize 20, and level 5 grants fire on us. So, you know, your fire, your fira, your firaga. And energized just means while you have a fire lens junctioned, you gain this much bonus vigor. And not all of them have the same kind of junction bonus like this, but with fire, that's a casting time of 1 action, close range, instant duration, resistance, agility for half damage, 3 and costs 3 mana. The target suffers 3 dice of thermal damage plus your soul bonus dice. And flammable objects can be ignited. At Fireden, it costs 2 actions, has a range of medium, and costs 36 mana. And it suffers 3... and I think I understand why the cost jumps so much. Because Fireon, it's 3 dice of thermal damage for each of your soul bonus dice. And the target catches fire and takes 3 dice of thermal damage at the beginning of its turn if it can take actions, or at the end of each round otherwise for 2 rounds. And Fire Honest is it uses 3 actions, costs 84 mana, and burns anything and everything before you in a 25-foot diameter sphere in which you can see in range. Everything in this suffers 1 dice times 100 thermal damage. Things destroyed by this magic are incinerated completely and cannot be repaired or revived. And
I'm gonna skip ahead just a little bit to the one right after with Flare. If you think that was bad, Pharos off the Flare lens. Casting time, 6 actions. Medium, range, instant duration, stamina for half damage on resistance, 360 mana. Considered by most the ultimate expression of destruction magic, you release a single mode of antimatter plasma that streaks like a shooting star towards a creature or target you can see within range, growing brighter as it approaches. On impact, the Pharos releases a nuclear blast of antimatter annihilation. Everything within 25 feet of the target takes 1 dice times 1,000 radiation damage for each of your soul bonus dice. Mm-hmm. Everything in the next 50 feet of the blast takes 1/10 of this damage. Everything following 50 feet takes 1/100th of this damage. And considering you're multiplying by the thousands, this is still going to be noticeable damage, even at 100. Creatures in this area are reduced to 0 health or slain and disintegrated. Objects reduced to 0 durability or disintegrated.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
That seems to be the most expensive thing I've seen as far as mana cost. So if you just want the upper limit of insanity that this game has with Lens, that right there is it.
Yeah, and we have kind of had a precursor to the whole spend mana to level up with the gunglaive for the gunglaive. But I'm looking back at the Lens Mage to get a bit of context with it, and yes, they have lens arts, but let's remember that just by increasing the mana cost of a lens spell just a little bit, a lens mage can do even crazier shit.
Yeah.
For example, energy. For example, imagine taking that spell and adding the energize refractions. Which, if you're to refresh your memory, it does add 1 action to the casting time of a lens, and you have to spend 4 more MP. But instead of rolling damage, you just max out the dice. I mean, so it does put it. There's also the fact that that if you recall, lens mages could refine lenses, so they could actually boost the quality tier by spending mana. I will admit the idea of permanently spending mana is the one part that I'm kind of iffy about.
See, I'm glancing through to see if there's a clarity on this. Like, if you lose that lens, is that mana that you use to raise it up gone? Or do you get that back like you would the slot? As written, I believe the intent is you just lose it.
Yeah. But let me go back up to recovering mana.
If it is the case you were just supposed to lose the mana, that might be something I wouldn't do were I running this game.
It does. Now, in recovering mana, we had said that each night's rest will recover 20 points of mana plus any bonuses from soul. So given that, I think it's I'd like to think that it's possible to recover to raise your maximum mana back up.
See, again, that's how I'd run it, but I don't think that's how it's worded. That said, we've come across numerous typos in this book, especially in this section. But I definitely say, like, yeah, go ahead, the permanent sacrifice for the lenses to increase their power, okay. But if you replace or lose that lens, I'd grant it back.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the intent was supposed to be.
And remember, your starting mana is equal to your soul stat. Though depending on background, class, and the like, you might start with more.
But yeah, just looking through all of the actual lenses at a glance, like, I'm not seeing anything here you wouldn't expect out of some type of magic system.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of buffs, debuffs, damaging stuff, a variety of other interesting effects.
Let me load up the character sheet for a moment. I want to. I think that if I'm being on, you know how we said that the use of mana and lens would be a deciding factor. Um, I think the result that we have here is that the idea of permanently of reducing your maximum mana to level up your setup, that's something I'm a little bit iffy about. You're basically reducing your max MP to level these kind of things up. Um,
Again, I think I'm okay with it. Just seeing what kind of crazy stuff we discovered with a couple spells we looked at.
mm-hmm.
My only contention is making it permanent, even if you replace or lose the lens.
Yeah.
Which, considering you're somewhat limited on how many lenses you're going to have, that is almost inevitably going to happen, I think, if you're in any kind of longer running campaign.
Yeah, it's just a it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. And in all fairness, it's not like you're going to be getting a huge amount of spells um from lens. You're only well, each of the lenses that we've seen, you're only really going to get 3 spells out of at most.
Like, I think a few of them don't have any kind of static buff, or just passive type of buff, and some do just seem to grant more abilities, but it does seem most of them are 3 spells and a buff of some type.
Mm-hmm. Which is still fitting within the tree setup that we have here. I just think that it may it maybe could have I'm not the just the idea of reducing max MP is, for whatever reason, it just doesn't sit with me. That's a me issue.
Yeah,
If you're
I
depending
could
on the kind
definitely
of
see where you're
campaign
coming from.
depending on the kind of campaign you're running, it might be a lighter issue. Um, and that's still just one. At the very least, this isn't a case where spell casting is going to overtake everything when it comes to how the game works.
And again, even if that did kind of end up being the case, this is a situation in which I think it's kind of assumed everyone's going to have a lens at least.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you're relegating the strongest aspect of your game to 1 or 2 classes. Everyone's going to have access to it to some degree.
Pretty much. And there's certainly no shortage of lenses.
I recall doing a quick count. It's at least 20 lenses in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the options.
Although some, like Infernal, are an interesting beast, where instead you get the Violate ability at the start, and then every time you rank up the lens, you unlock an ability identical to that Cursebrand sigil. If this game really wanted to do the materia thing, an easy way to do that is have it that lens levels are maintained. I.e., if you level up a lens and somebody else equips that if you give that lens to somebody else to equip, the level is still there. But
I don't think it's specified if it stayed or not.
that's what since this is channeling materia, that's what I would do personally.
Especially with that would make more sense, like it with the permanent mana cost, because yet mana is now permanently in that lens, even if given to somebody else.
Though I do wonder. It'd be interesting if somebody argued that they used a mana pool to act as a substitute. Which, if somebody tried to do that, I would allow it.
Yeah. It's one of those things I want to have a bit more of a feel of how the game actually plays on paper before I decide how I'd want to go about that, but seems like a fine idea to me.
Overall, I'd say we don't have much in the way of problems when it comes to the Magic system. It's definitely not going to be acting like the star of the damn show.
Yeah.
There's just a couple of nitpicks that we have, but that's going to happen with just about any game.
Yeah. I think we can safely go back and look at all the things we put a pin on and go, okay, yeah, I'm all right with this.
So I think that'll do it for the penultimate episode of our look through of Cursebrand Chronicles. Next week, we will be diving into the equipment as well as the combats, as well as combat in action, and give our final thoughts on Cursebrand.
Next week is Network 23.
Yep, I have to correct myself. It's on the 20th that we'll be looking at the finale. And so, but I think we are more or less settled into what our final thoughts will be. But we will see in a couple weeks. And yeah, the 3-in-1 rule applies. So next week we're going to be looking at a one-shot in Network 23. So please look forward to that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.